There we go. All right, looks like we are live. I'm going to get the volume on the old game here up. So, sorry for being out last week on the stream. Had a cat at the vet all day, literally all day. It was a bit of a thing. So, didn't feel up to streaming after that experience. But we're back here, and hey, unlike the last couple streams, we have a lot to talk about because D23 has happened. Let me know if the game volume and my mic volume are kind of a friendly mix. I can turn the game down if necessary. Hey, Holly, welcome. Let me get the, let's see how best to do this. That should work without completely ruining the game. So, for any new viewers, or just as a reminder to those returning, we are playing a little bit of Roller Coaster Tycoon. This is some casual play. We're not doing speed runs. We're not doing challenge runs. We are doing a little bit of slight challenge in that we're trying not to use advertising on the parks. We are trying to use as many of the rides we have available, but overall we're just hanging out, talking theme park news, and having fun. So we're going to go ahead and just get started on Bumbly Beach. We're going to do Bumbly Beach and Trinity Islands. They're both fairly quick. This one's actually one of the quickest because it's got a year 2 deadline. And that 750 seems like a lot, but we've already got 100 in the park. But yeah, so since the last stream, we have had D23, which is the Disney fan event where they announce a bunch of stuff, including park stuff. And as would be expected, they announced a bunch of park stuff. So a lot of that news that wasn't happening the last few times we streamed, we got a bunch of updates on a lot of projects, some new looks at some things. I will say overall, I found it, a lot of the news, a little lackluster. It felt like a lot of updates on things that had been announced over the last several years and not a whole lot of new, which is to be expected. They're in a building period, but also there wasn't a whole lot of hard evidence, so to speak, presented. It was a lot of, hey, remember this thing that we said we were building? That still, which, not terrible, but not exactly confidence inspiring. Excuse me 1 second. Fadelin's been living under a rock for the past week, so glad to get the news roundup. That's kind of the thing. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot. The biggest updates, I think, at least for me personally, the things that I found the most compelling were the updates about the Tropical Americas expansion at Animal Kingdom, which after the way that Epcot's kind of fallen apart on its original premise, Animal Kingdom's definitely my favorite Disney park, especially here in Florida. And I still don't like the name. I still think you could have just done South America, had Indy going to an Inca ruin instead of it having to be, I believe it's Mayan that they're doing. I keep forgetting. Whether it's supposed to be Aztec or Maya, which there is a distinct difference, especially in age of those cultures. So, and as a bit of a nerd for Mesoamerican history, especially pre-Columbian history, I was both a little unnerved and kind of encouraged by some of the stuff they had. So I think one of the coolest things is they showed off the exterior of what was once dinosaur, well, what was once Countdown to Extinction and then became dinosaur, and is now going to be Indiana Jones and the Myth of the Jade Serpent, which I have some criticisms of that name. I don't think it's particularly good. I saw some people saying, "Oh, it felt too long." It's exact same amount of words as Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, so I'm fine with the length. I find the Myth of the Jade Serpent to be not particularly compelling as a name, just because we're not there for a myth. We're there for the actual thing. So the Raiders of the Lost Ark are the villains, the Nazis that Indy is fighting in that movie. And the Lost Ark, we're going to go find that Lost Ark on Indy's adventure with him. Like, that is the entire premise of that movie. The Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, we're actually going to go to the Temple of Doom. Obviously, it's, not... that's not its proper name, but in the fiction of the story, but that is where we're going to end up in that story. I guess Last Crusade's a bit more of an amorphous thing. That was the one where I was kind of like, okay, I can see, like, if you're going with a more Last Crusade-ish type story. But it's this... I feel like just Indiana Jones and the Search for the Jade Serpent, if you really wanted to have the "and" in there, or the qualifier in there, so it's not just Indiana Jones and the Jade Serpent. I think I've said this before. I think it sounds a bit like a Harry Potter title. Yeah, we're going mything. Yeah, exactly. We're going mything. Indiana Jones is mything. Somebody we're supposed to be finding Indiana Jones, but the person who's sending us on our quest has lisp, so it's just Indiana Jones is mything. It's pretty good. But yeah, I'm excited for the ride, and so, but name aside, the name, Disney's horrible at naming rides lately, so I guess it's just par for the course. It's not the worst one. I don't find it particularly compelling as a name. It's fine. Again, like I said, it reads a little bit more like a new Harry Potter ride than a Indiana Jones ride to me, but it's not awful. And I will say the exterior, and this is where we get into kind of the ticky-tacky of a lot of what did happen at D23. The model that they showed of the exterior is very compelling. The aesthetic is very... So Joe Rohde did a lot of the talk about it, but also so did Maslam. I keep forgetting what his first name is. Tom? I don't want to be wrong, but that guy. But in talking about the in talking about these developments for the park, they were very explicit that they had done their research, that they had I think the phrase that was used was that some of the Mayan experts, I think it was Mayan experts that they had worked with, felt that some of the Imagineers could teach an undergraduate course on Mayan mythology now, given the level of research and everything that they've done. And I will say some of the stuff that they showed really does look, again, to a trained eye, to somebody who's spent time watching Great Courses series on this. I'm a subscriber to Ed Bernhard's YouTube channel. He's an amazing educator and researcher. He, along with a team, obviously, but he's credited with discovering some Mayan cities out in the jungles. He's got a great YouTube channel. Check it out if you're into that kind of stuff. And he has a great courses series, actually a couple great courses series as well, that I really enjoyed watching. And to that, as an enthusiast of this kind of lore and myth telling and the aesthetic of those temples, the model that they showed for the exterior is pretty legit looking, I gotta say. That they've really incorporated, there's a certain kind of busyness to the design of those temples, and there's a certain design language. The language, their inscriptions, it's not hieroglyph, it's not their language was very particular, but the way that it's carved into the surfaces is very compelling in this model. Like it looks like they did the due diligence to make it look like an authentic Mayan temple, and that is very cool. The lore around Disney seems to be pitching this as this. I don't know why I built a second Ferris wheel. We're trying not to build dupes. Disney is very much pitching this as it's like the Yeti is a nature defending myth in Nepalese culture for Expedition Everest, and so we're leaning into that here. I will say I thought that the serpent that they were referencing was a guardian of the underworld, but I could be wrong. I'm not an expert, but yeah, I'm definitely some cool stuff to be excited about there for Animal Kingdom. The Encanto, sorry for bumping the mic there. The Encanto ride was actually what I was more excited about. I was really not interested in the Indiana Jones because it felt like it was going to be, it's a ride overlay. We've seen how Disney's done re-themes lately. It's not been a great track record, at least from a reliability standpoint, if nothing else. And I will say we kind of knew that the storyline was going to be it's a party and everybody's invited storyline for that Encanto attraction. Kind of made sense. That said, and it is focusing on the Antonio character, who was the one who talks to animals. So, of course, again, it's Animal Kingdom. That makes sense. That tracks. No real surprises there. But it is one of those, it's that same storyline again. They just announced Monsters Inc. land in Hollywood Studios, and it's a party, and it's Human Day. All the humans are invited to Monsterland. They just did that with the Splash Mountain retheme to Tiana's. It's a party, and we're looking for the special spice, and everybody's invited. It's just that storyline is a little bit played out, and I totally understand why this keeps happening. We're at a point where Disney doesn't want to do conflict in their ride stories. I think that is pretty clear that most of their storytelling on rides has been fairly conflict-free, minus clones, and I'll give Guardians of the Galaxy a bit of a pass there, since there is a bit of, I mean, it's more of a, it depends on how you define the Celestials, as, you know, whether they're villains or just forces of nature. I'll go with the kind of Jack Kirby, more forces of nature definition personally, but, you know, that one I could see an argument around. And obviously all the Star Wars stuff is a bit more conflict based, but it does feel like since 2020, they've not really wanted to build rides with conflict built into the narrative. And to be fair, there's not, like, how are you going to, and to Fadelin's question, do you have any ideas that would have worked better for the Encanto ride? Because I'm drawing a blank. Yeah, I mean, how are you going, it's a movie about generational trauma and conflict, interfamily conflict. How do you put that into a ride theme? Like, it just, this is a moment we see in the movie, it's cute, it ties into the animal theme. Like, is it great? No. Is it fine? Yeah, totally. There's nothing wrong with it. It'll work. No one's going to complain that it wasn't fun, you know, like it's meant to be a fun ride. It's not meant to be super exciting, super thrilling. It is a family dark ride. So yeah, no, I don't think that there is a better, it just kind of fits. Yeah, you don't want to do the Civil War conflict that actually plays into the movie's storyline. It's one of those, this is a perfect example of where doing the it's a party and everybody's invited storyline totally fits, totally makes sense, totally valid. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. In this one case, it's actually the best choice. The problem isn't doing it on this ride. The problem is you've done it on all the other rides so much recently that it just, and even Guardians is it's the Wonders of Xandar Pavilion at Epcot, like inviting the humans in to see Xandar culture. So it's maybe not the full-on, it's a party and everybody's invited, because there is at least a little bit of conflict. There's a MacGuffin that we're chasing down, but it's not that storyline of everything being a party. It makes the rides indistinct from one another is my biggest complaint. Doesn't feel like it's a unique or special ride. It feels like it's another one of those, and that doesn't feel particularly inspiring to me, but I'm sure the ride will be fun. I'm sure it'll be cute. I can't think of a better way of doing it, and I can't think of doing a better Encanto ride personally than what they are doing. And it looks, I was extremely excited for what you could do in a highly detailed, animatronic-driven, bringing Casita to life version of an Encanto ride. Yeah, imagine Haunted Mansion, but with trackless vehicles that are magical items from around the house, and that does look like what the ride vehicle is going to be. And you are being given a tour, and you're being welcomed in for Antonio's gift giving, and we're going to explore the animals, and he's going to talk to the animals for us, and it's going to be fun. And it's just a big party. Cool. I'm 100% here for this, and the visual language of the movie really set up a lot of fun elements that you could do with this. And it looks like they're mostly going to be delivering on that, but it just feels a little played, a little kind of, okay, it's just another one of those then. Like, it doesn't feel as special as I would have hoped, which is, again, it doesn't seem bad by any measure, but it doesn't seem particularly exciting, but we'll see. Despite me having these criticisms, I'm actually very open-minded on how that ride's going to turn out, because I genuinely think it could be a lot of fun. And bright colors, good music, like, my biggest concern, bright colors, good music, like, it should be fun. My biggest concern is a lack of animatronics. It feels like the perfect kind of, what if we did the Haunted Mansion, all practical, fairly simple mechanics, stuff that works, proven for decades kind of technology. No, it doesn't have to be super computerized, amazing. I mean, we can use those things, but it doesn't have to be, the latest actuators in the motors and just so simple pneumatic pistons to cause birds to pop up and flutter their wings. Just like the heads popping up behind the gravestones on the Haunted Mansion, right? Like, it could be very simple, very, very tastefully done. But I'm worried that it's going to be mostly screens, or a lot of screens as backgrounds. That it's going to be very, and what animatronics there will be the very problematic, from a maintenance standpoint, modern animatronics, because Kylo Ren on yep, wow, I'm blanking on the Star Wars ride's name with Rise of the Resistance. Jeez, why was I blanking on that? Kylo on Rise of the Resistance doesn't work very often. A lot of those animatronics on Tiana's Bayou are broken most of the time. Like, Disney doesn't have a great track record at the moment of putting in animatronics that last. And I think it's a complexity issue. I think they are too driven by, but look how impressive it is, and less driven by, does it just work? Does it just function? And long term, I guess we'll see whether or not that's how they go with the Encanto attraction. I'm hoping that it's one of those keep it simple, stupid kind of things. Just, you can have animatronics, just make them very simple. Just make them very simple moving figures. They don't need to be any more complex than the birds in the Tiki Room. Like, genuinely, that is the level of animatronic that you need to have on that ride. You can have some more advanced stuff for the human characters if you really need to. I get that they want a certain sense of realism, a certain sense of accuracy to the movie characters. Use the animatronic style. I think, given the character design style, using the style of characters that they have on the Frozen rides, which are more advanced, but they're not as, or at least they don't seem to be as prone to failure. I could be wrong. I'm not. If I'm being completely honest, I don't keep up with what maintenance on those rides looks like all day, every day. But those seem to, I don't see people complaining about those being down very often. No more so than any other animatronic, I think. So something like that would be what I would hope for. Like I said, I'm worried it's going to be a lot of screens. It just, the stuff that they're showing looks like a lot of screens. And then the other complaint is the lack of animals. It was funny because the number of people that were, oh, I didn't realize there were animals in that section of Animal Kingdom, or confidently stating there were no animals there before. It's like, no, there definitely were. There was a croc, there were cranes, there were actually other kinds of birds as well. There were tortoises. There were all kinds of inheritors of the dinosaurs type animals over there. They had from opening day. Like, this wasn't like a new thing that they had just added. This was literally an opening day part of the attraction in Dinoland USA, was animal displays of actual animals in the Animal Kingdom. And Joe Rohde coming out and saying, oh, well, it's not in the budget, so we're not going to have animals in that part of the park. It's like, okay, so you used to have them there, but for your retheme, you didn't prioritize them enough to spend the money on it. Cool. That, I know it's real popular to love everything Joe Rohde does and has ever done. I mean, I'm a big Animal Kingdom stan. I'm a big Adventures Club stan. I get it. I like Joe Rohde. I like his work. I'm less confident in the way he's selling me this particular expansion. In the same way that I don't feel Avatar fits that park particularly well. It's fine. It's got a very generic conservation motif to it, so it's not the worst thing ever. But I'm not incredibly in love with it. This feels a bit more, feels a little bit more lazy. Feels a little bit more like they're not going to. Wow, that's a lot of logs for this log flume, huh? Definitely doesn't feel like they're going to be as concerned with. It feels like it's shoved some IP in. Doesn't feel like it's necessarily, this is Animal Kingdom. This feels like it's Adventure Land, the park. Which I like Adventureland. That's my favorite area. Well, that's a strong way to. It is easily in my top 2 areas of Magic Kingdom and Disneyland. So I really do like the adventure aesthetic. I do like the idea of we're navigating these dangerous jungles and stuff like that. I like Jungle Cruise. I like a lot of that stuff. So it's not that I don't like that as a theme for a theme park, but I am a little disappointed that that's what Animal Kingdom is becoming, because it doesn't really feel like the park's about animals anymore, or it feels less about animals as it goes on. And granted, Camp Mini Mickey was not very good, but I don't know that Avatar long term is going to have proved to have been the best land. Phaedon, what are some examples of rides with good stories behind them? I mean, you've been around the channel long enough to know I'm going to say Carousel of Progress, right? And of course, I'm half jokingly saying that in the sense of the story behind the ride, meaning the development of the ride being the story behind it, but also the element that the story it's telling, I think, was actually... I'm one of those crazies that doesn't think it needed to be updated. And I'm hoping that they send the original sets back to Disneyland and restore it back to its original form. There's been scuttlebutt about that, though nothing official. I don't hold out too much hope that that'll happen, but I think it would be very, very, very cool if they did do that. It's one of those things where the story it was trying to tell is one that went through many iterations that Walt himself, Disney the man, was trying to tell for the first decade of his park. It was going to be an Edison walk-through attraction. It was going to tell the story of electrification, which is what it does. The problem is that we take electricity for granted. The idea of electricity representing progress, that electrification represents progress, just doesn't mean anything to people anymore. Clearly, Disney, I mean, there's enough people defending the decision to change it and make it more modern and relatable that clearly that story doesn't resonate with people anymore. They just take the idea of, yeah, we have electricity. They don't think of a world before electricity. And the ride doesn't... It may tell them about what that was like, but they don't really... Because the ride's telling it from the perspective of a family seeing these changes happen in front of them. And I get that the last scene was always going to be out of date and was always going to be... From the time it was made, it was trying to be futuristic to some degree, so it's always going to lose out. It's going to suffer the Tomorrowland problem. And again, did a whole video on this, so, more thoughts there. But I'm one of those people that just didn't think it needed to change. But obviously they're going ahead and doing that, so hopefully the new version is not bad. That's about the best that I can hope for at this point. But I think that story, again, to me, that story of seeing how people's lives changed from we have to burn candles to see at night. We have to use gas lamps to... There's this single plug in the middle of the ceiling with wires that come out of it and plug into anything you want to use. You want to iron your clothes, you plug into this really unsafe thing in the middle of the ceiling. You want to cook dinner with an electric skillet, you plug it into this thing in the middle of the ceiling, right? Like, it's this weird kind of esoteric way of doing things, and plugs were largely not standardized yet, so things were very wonky and weird. It's something that, again, modern people probably, everything just works. You just plug it in and it works. Electricity doesn't mean anything to people. The idea that your phone battery has to be recharged is an annoyance, not this kind of like, it's amazing that I can take little electric pixies and shove them into this phone and it works for hours and hours and hours on end. I get it. I'm weird in that way, that I find that story still compelling, but that was one that I would point to. As far as more traditional rides with good stories behind them, Maelstrom was always very compelling to me. The idea you're getting in this boat, you're going on a tour of Norway, you get kind of knocked off course, and and a very similar ride would be the Jurassic Park River Adventure. Again, you're going on this tour in Jurassic Park, you get knocked off course, and it's going to take you, in the case of Maelstrom, it's taking you through the lore and history into the, dark mists of time and the history of Norway, and you're seeing these ancient elf spirits and stuff like that, that still have, to some degree, a meaning to their modern culture, or at least did in the 80s when that ride was built. Actually, early 90s when that ride was built. Jurassic Park River Adventure, again, you're going and you're seeing some dinosaurs on a tour. Like, that alone is a compelling ride. But then, of course, it knocks you... Everything goes wrong, just like it does in the Jurassic Park movies, and it knocks you off course, and, you're going into the raptor paddock. You're not supposed to go in there. And then, of course, everything goes haywire. Animals escape, and there's a T-Rex attacking you, and, come on. Like, that's... You do not need to be explained to you what is happening on that ride. You can be completely non-verbal and ride that ride and totally get the idea of you are being attacked by dinosaurs, and they were in cages and now they're not, and everything's gone wrong. And it's incredibly, even without having ever seen a Jurassic Park movie, it's incredibly efficient storytelling. I know a lot of Disney fans would say Haunted Mansion as a ride with a great story. I would only push back on it as I think you have to hear and understand the narration, and if it's not in your primary language or in a language that you speak or understand, that's going to be a challenge for you. And then also, if it's if you've got people talking over the narration, which seems to be a real problem these days. So you're not kind of hearing the story of you're in a haunted house, you're trapped, there's no exit, and you're being invited to become one of the 990. You're invited to become number 1,000 of the 999 souls trapped here. Again, I don't know that it's a particularly compelling story. It's just a standard haunted house. You're in a spooky house, there's ghosts. Enjoy. But a lot of the best ride narratives are very simple. We don't need to have everything explained to us. We don't need to, at least I don't, and I think a lot of, especially if you don't speak the language, if you don't understand the dialogue of the ride, is the ride still enjoyable? If the answer is yes, and it's not like a thrill ride where it's like, it's a roller coaster and it's going to flip you upside down, so, who cares if it's, what the story is. If it's a narrative-based, especially dark rides, personally, I think it should be able to tell its story with visuals only, without narration. But there are definitely some good narrative-focused rides that do use narration. And again, I'd put Haunted Mansion in that list. So we're coming up on the end of year one. We are less than 80 guests away. I thought it was going to go up, and it started going down. So we're not too far away. We can build a big roller coaster. We've got a bunch of cash and almost done with this. Almost done with it. Well, I say we could build a big roller coaster. We don't really have... I guess we can do one of these again. Man, I really... this I forget how these early scenarios in this game really just, it's the wooden coaster and the mini coaster, and that is it. And like, yeah, we're researching pretty much everything as opposed to just specifically roller coasters, just because financially and space-wise it makes more sense to have some of these smaller flats and stuff. That log flume is doing business, though. How much money is this thing made? Wait, why is there nobody... Why are people not hopping on it? Is it too expensive? Is that what's happened? Here, let's cut this down to $12.50. Still too much. That is our problem, right? Can't afford it not paying. Cool. Makes me think of that terrible Fast and Furious ride. All I remember was the word family. And the main character hanging from a helicopter. There's a lot of talking in that ride, though. There was a lot of talking in Supercharged. So, yeah, Supercharged just closed. Had its final day. Will not be missed by most people. And I am one of them. That ride was from a period in Universal's history that is early in the Comcast acquisition. There were a lot of decisions that were definitely decisions that they made. That ride was originally adapted from the end of the studio tour out in Hollywood to replace what at the time was called Disaster. I'm not going to shout it into the microphone, even though it did have an exclamation point at the end, because rip headphone users. But that ride was called Disaster, which was we're doing a cheesy B-movie take on the original Earthquake ride that was there from opening day. And they had Christopher Walken doing a hammy, even for Christopher Walken, performance as a kind of sleazy, kind of goofy Hollywood director. Was not a particularly good overlay, but it was still mostly the classic ride. That supercharged version, though, that was they just gutted the entire thing and just put in a tunnel full of screens with some wind that blew on you, and played a movie that had once played at the end of the studio tour in Hollywood. And it was bad. It's just a bad ride. I have some sympathy for whoever. I don't actually know who worked on that ride. In the same way that Louis Alfieri, I have sympathy for him and what happened with Rip Ride Rocket, because he was given remit to make what could have been one of the coolest roller coasters in the world, and was unfortunately what's the right word that I can use on YouTube without getting demonetized? He was left in the lurch. That's probably the most archaic way I can put it, but yeah, he was left in the lurch by the Comcast acquisition on that ride. And then Maurer had some issues with the ride mech, specifically the lift hill, and that gave it a bad reputation at opening. And then because of the nature of the sale to Comcast and Vivendi Universal splitting off, Vivendi splitting off from Universal and taking the Universal record label catalog with them, that kind of ruined it. I reached out to him once a few years ago, and unfortunately he was not See Through Paths. Unfortunately he was out of the country at the time and was not available. But he is a bucket list get for an interview, because I want to talk to him about that ride. Because I have theories about what that ride was intended to be. Rip Ride Rocket being the ride I'm talking about. And yeah, I have some thoughts and some ideas of what I think they were going for there that he could shed some light on. I would really like to talk to him. So if anybody knows him, my email's on the channel somewhere, I think. Shoot him. It's just themeparchive@gmail.com. Have him shoot me an email. But anyway, the supercharged ride, like I said, I have some sympathy for the team that worked on it, just because they clearly weren't given. They were clearly told, make this video that was made for that was made for the studio tour in Hollywood, make it work for this ride mech in Orlando, and do it cheap. Do it very, very cheap. And yeah, man, it was a bad ride. It's a bad ride. I totally understand how they did what they did what they had to do to try to make it functional. But it wasn't a good idea. It wasn't a good idea to take this very specific into a long tour ride where people are hot. They've been sitting in an unair-conditioned tram driving through the studio lot. They've seen Hill Valley, where the Courthouse Square, where Hill Valley was in the sets for Back to the Future. They've seen Colonial Street, where The Burbs was filmed. That's my connection to it. Most people think of it as Wisteria Lane, I think is what the name was, from Desperate Housewives, I guess. I never really watched that show. It wasn't really my thing. But that's apparently what its kind of most famous recent usage was, and it still gets used today. But yeah, so people have been sitting through all this long tour, seeing the back lot, and then they get to go and check out, hey, look, it's Dom's Charger, and then all of a sudden there's video playing on the tram telling you about looking out for Dom and this, that, and the other. It's very cool and fun, and hey, family. Did not translate to a screen-based ride that was all it was. And then the Musion effect, where they it's essentially a form of Pepper's Ghost, where they project it to make it look 3D. That technology was very glowy and not very well done. Never particularly looked good, but in that ride in particular, it was not the nicest looking. So yeah, I was just what was the oh man, there's a word that The Rock says in that ride. Cookie puss. Call somebody cookie puss. It's just it's weird, man. That ride was so goofy. And 100% the queue was very cool. I'll give it that. If you're a bit of a car nerd, if you like those movies, which I'm not a big fan of I'm not a big fan after the third one. Well, after it started to become more of a cartoon and less of a car franchise. But as a car nerd, I did like the original movies, and I can appreciate the goofiness of it. It's very stupid, but there's some fun to be had there. But the team members were really the ones that made that ride even halfway enjoyable, because they were literally from the first month were lampooning it. And so in the same way that you had the Cyberdyne representative, it's super over at T23D, and being very like obnoxious PR lady as a gag. The team members made what was a fairly bad ride, fairly unenjoyable screen-based ride. Pretty funny, pretty entertaining. Definitely not the worst thing on Universal property. Cast members are the best. That's a remember the family thing. Yeah. Yeah, they were just, again, that ride was not good. It's not a good ride. But when you got somebody in there that was having fun with it, having fun with the role, and wasn't taking it too seriously, it made the ride actually quite enjoyable. I mean, the pre-shows, that's kind of the problem though, right? Like, the queue was entertaining. Pre-show could be very funny with the right team member in there making jokes. And then you got into the actual ride and it didn't look very good. It was not mixed very well, the audio wise. The visuals were pretty ridiculous and terrible, and not in a ha ha ha, I'm having so much fun, this is fun way, but like I can barely see anything because I'm crowded in the middle of this tram that isn't designed for people to watch screens on. It just was. I'm always thinking of changes in theme parks as upgrades or downgrades. I find that to be a very helpful way of looking at it. Is the replacement better than the thing it was replacing, or at least equal or better? Like, was this an upgrade? Was this a downgrade? Was it a side grade, so to speak? And I was going to say, in my opinion, going based on Walt Disney's method of talking about just creative work in general, but especially his theme park, he referred to it as plussing. And he, again, took that from the world of movie production, but it applied to Disneyland as well. So is it a plus? Are we plussing the experience? And, yeah, man, it's hard to look at Rocket and the new Fast and Furious coaster that they're replacing it with and look at Supercharged and not see the new Fast and Furious coaster as a massive plus over those two other attractions. Usually the math of trading two attractions for one is not that great. Like, that doesn't usually pan out to your benefit, but in that particular case, it's kind of hard to complain. Let's see we have water slide. So that's it. Water slide and Junior Coaster are really the only things we haven't. We're gonna get Wonderland theme. I'm trying to keep an eye on this right here. We're kind of right at the cusp, and it's August of year 2, so we're almost to the end of this particular scenario. Mostly just management here, but I also don't want, I want to keep an eye on this, make sure it doesn't dip down and we don't fail the scenario. Could put in a couple more stalls just to, let's see, put another balloon stall. I just put a bunch of balloon stalls in, but just to make sure that our guest cap is high enough that we have enough people in here. I don't think I've shown off this map. It's fun. It's got like little, I believe in the UK they call these council estates. I don't know. It's just something I heard in like Doctor Who or something. But yeah, they got little block housing out here, and we're on the seaside making our little, hey, maze. Making our little theme park. Well, amusement park. Let's just do a really goofy maze. It's like obscenely easy, but takes forever to walk through. And this is just for me, just because I think it's funny. It has no benefit whatsoever. I mean, it'll give us a little bit of padding on our guests, but really actually shouldn't have any true effect. We do need to make this as max as possible, so we can just, yeah, nobody wants to go on it. Nobody wants to go in that stupid maze. It must be really boring. Of course, now they're going to want to go on it because it's raining, and yeah, it's very boring. And there we go. Congratulations. We have achieved the objective with this. I mean, actually, I thought this log flume was just going to be here to make money. But it's just churning people. All right, let's quit to menu and let's start the next scenario. This is Trinity Islands. This one's... got to open it first. And actually... well, let's not. I was going to say let's do one where we set an entry fee. But I'm not going to do that right now because I don't actually know how much money the people are carrying in this scenario. I'm going to be lazy about this. So this is one of those, I think I talked about it on the Evergreen Gardens stream. Evergreen Gardens, I always would block off the further reaches of the park just because people wander out here, or would wander out into the far reaches of that particular park and get lost, and it was miserable. And I was challenging myself on that one not to do that. This one, we can try, but I don't know that it's a good idea, just because there's just this one long path in, and really what it wants is a loop here, a connection from there to there. But building on water is very expensive. That's kind of the, oops, too far in. That's kind of the challenge of this particular scenario, is everything costs more when you build on water. So this, if we were building this pathway just here on a flat piece of ground, it would only be $12. Here it's 22, 27. Like, it's, everything costs more. And we can raise and lower land to try to make it a little more tolerable. But it's not particularly effective, because that also costs money. So it just ends up being a more expensive scenario. Now, as we demonstrated in that last park, making money is, oops, that's not what we want. Making money is not exactly the hardest thing in the game sometimes. I don't want water rides, actually, and of course the first thing it's developing is a water ride. Okay, we need to connect this to the path. But yeah, the problem with this park is really just early on the money. Once we kind of are established and up and running, Oh, you know what we need to do? And I didn't... I'm kicking myself because I don't think I built enough bathrooms to ever get it in the last one. But even if I had done, I never checked our awards to see if we got the Best Bathrooms award. And it's not a Theme Parchive Roller Coaster Tycoon stream if we don't get the Best Bathroom award. So I'm going to build 10 bathrooms, which is definitely the best way to spend the limited money in this more expensive scenario. Definitely very smart, and definitely not going to come back and bite me at all. Totally. Let's see. I think I am just going to kind of fill in the whole park. Should put some drink stalls next to all these bathrooms. And that way, A, at least we can make a little bit of money. But B, there's a reason for them to use the bathrooms. Okay, let's see. Where is the thinnest? Did I put one right next to the entrance? I don't remember. I did. Yeah, and there is one right there. I can see it between the trees. Yeah. Evenly spacing 10 bathrooms out in this park is a bit of a nonsense. Oh, I should also have left that up so we can see it. So 750 guests, same as the last scenario. We have an extra year compared to the last scenario. And we will need it because this is just a little bit of a harder thing because we have to... I mean, it's really not that bad. Part of the reason why I was tempted to charge for the park entry is because that's a good way to exploit. See, Pheidolin, you every time on the stream, you remind me that I need to make a golden toilet award emoji for the chat. And then I forget and I don't do it. And then I come back and I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to stream. I've done everything I need to do to prep. Everything's fine. And then you remind me, no, because there's not golden toilets. Okay, let's see. This one needs to connect. I'm trying to think. Ugh. And all it did was add canoes for the boat hire ride. Wow. Well, that was a waste of $400 of research for that month. So other stuff from D23 that we haven't talked about. Let's see. So I have long... there's a... I mean, you can go dig through the Theme Parchive Twitter if you want to. It was sometime last year. There was a there was something where I had posted about feeling like Avatar wasn't going to happen out at DCA. They provided a small update on it. They showed a model. There's some weird naming going on around it. As far as, like, they seem to be calling it an experience as opposed to a land. Or even an attraction. Which does raise some question over whether it will actually happen or not. It's funny. I was, saying however long that was ago. Oh, I feel like this is going to go the way of Play Pavilion, something they announce and then just abandon with no further word on the subject. And yet they did provide some modicum of an update, so maybe it is actually happening. And of course, after that very minimal update on it, now I'm seeing a bunch of like not insignificant accounts questioning whether it'll ever happen. It's like, okay, well, I don't know, maybe my instincts were right then, maybe my instincts are wrong, and now everybody's kind of getting the vibe I was getting. I don't know. Game question: do you get penalized for putting a ride and then getting rid of it, or do you just lose all the money it costs to build it? You get some of the money back. It kind of depends on, I think, the age of the ride and some other stuff. But other than that, there's no real penalty for getting rid of a ride that you've built. There is the whatever guest. So every ride draws a certain number of guests. It adds to an invisible number, which there's mods that you can install to add. Okay, no. There's mods that you can install to add that number to your, like the display of that number so you can see it. But it's basically how many. I don't want to build another junior coaster, or what's it called here? Mini coaster. You can. So every ride you build adds a certain value to that, and stalls do this too. I think I've talked about this before on stream. Those all add to the value. As far as, and by value I don't mean value like economic value, I mean value as in like that number. And that number represents a soft limit on how many people will come to your park. When the spawning, like when the park has that many people in it, as represented by this number down here, it will decrease your spawn rate for new guests at the edge of the map, where there's a little spawner here, which of course I can't remove trees to show it to you very clearly. And of course it's hidden. Well, there we go. There's a little spawner right here at the edge of the map that generates guests randomly, just RNG. But there's a probability assigned to that number every certain number of game ticks. And that generates a new a new guest every once in a while. And part of the probability of that is your number of guests in your park versus how many you could have in your park, right? Like how many want to be in your park, that soft guest cap number. And every ride you build contributes to that number. So if you had, let's say, a big roller coaster, and you delete that big roller coaster, that's going to diminish your soft guest cap by that, whatever that value for that coaster was. Usually coasters are around 100 people. So if you are now over, so let's say you had a coaster that was worth 300 or worth 100. Let's say you had 300 people in your park and you were right at the soft guest cap. If you delete that coaster, your soft guest cap is at 200. And that number of people in the park will start to go down because it'll spawn people one quarter as often. Now, advertising, this is part of the reason why we're not using advertising. Again, it's not really a challenge run, but we're just, especially for these early scenarios, not using the advertising because it makes things too easy. The advertising ignores that number. It ignores the soft guest cap, and it just adds people. And it will continue adding people regardless of how many people are already in your park. And you can get absurd numbers of people in your park with literally 0 rides. You can build 1 ride. You can beat this exact scenario by building a 1-tile maze right here. So having this path tile, build an entrance, a maze that's completely open, an exit, and have this tile right here. And all you have to do is provide food and put an entertainer on that spot and just advertise. Charge for the park entry so that you take as much of their money as possible when coming in. Just leave them with $5 in their pocket. And you can literally just spam advertising and beat this scenario quite quickly doing that. I don't think that's the optimal, because I think with speedrunners, they also, in addition to advertising, they don't limit themselves to just that one spot. They just let people come in. They just hire a bunch of entertainers to keep people happy. They might block off segments of the thing just to keep people from getting too tired. But they're not going to the end of year 3. They're just, how fast can you get to 750 guests? There's a mode in here in the settings, in the options, where you can turn on that once you hit the guest goal, it clears automatically. You don't have to wait the time, which for speedrunning totally makes sense. Totally understandable why that's how you would set it up, because otherwise it's not really a good speed game, because the game just becomes set the fastest time, and everybody's record is going to be right at the same amount of time, because it's like you're just going to put it on fast forward and then get to October year 3 as fast as possible. So it's going to be how fast can you load in and set to that, and whatever your strat is to unlock, get to 750 and 600 at that time. But nobody's going to be faster than somebody else, because there's kind of a hard limit. So instead they do it where it just, when you clear it, you clear it. But that is not what the actual scenario says. The scenario says October year 3. So there is a certain amount of, again, like I said, I totally understand for speedrunning why it's done that way, but there is a certain amount of, it's not really what the objective is now, was it? And again, if you're doing a speed run, that's fine. I understand you have to kind of change the rules to make it work. For casual play, we'll get there when we get there. And we'll fast forward when necessary. Again, we're not trying to blaze through the scenario as quickly as possible. This is not... I was kind of hoping... Okay, we're going to do it this way. We're going to tight curve. Let me see what speed we're kind of doing when we hit the top here. Because this is part of the reason why I didn't want to build another... Okay, that's fine. It's not particularly compelling, but... And we have to get back down to 5 feet. Which is not going to be too hard. And we'll put a brake. Yes, slow it down to 67 miles per hour, that it's definitely not going. And we'll put a block brake. And I think I didn't build this. I don't think I did anything particularly stupid with this design. It's entirely possible that I was struggling on that last scenario because I was just yammering, and I was having a hard time with one of those rides getting the queue line back across where it needed to be. But there we go. That's what we want to see. And we'll test it. We might just hit, well, okay, we can build that Ferris wheel. I was going to say we might just hit high speed on the first year or so of this. That's not what I wanted to change. I'm going to change that to deep water. We might speed through the first year of this one just to get some more unlocks, make it a little bit easier to build things, because that is another problem with this particular scenario. Everything costs more, and you have very little researched at the beginning of it. But we are the park with the best toilet facilities in the country, and that's all that matters, really, because who wants to be the park with the worst toilet facilities? Six Flags. See, that's one of those jokes that only works in writing. It should be SICKS, Six Flags. Anyway, since since no one's gonna laugh at that joke, let's see. What did we unlock? The Ferris wheel. That's right. I will say I value the scenarios in Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 so much more, having come back to play Roller Coaster Tycoon 1, because there's just not all of them, but a lot of them have more, especially decorations unlocked. These, it's just all the same generic nothing. And it makes, like, there's no decorating the rides. Like, there's nothing to do to make them more visually appealing. And yeah, there's no real game benefit to that. Whereas there is in Planet Coaster. Planet Coaster did gamify that to some degree. It's not great, but it's not the worst. Actually, I don't know, I haven't mentioned this yet, and I don't know why. Today, Atari announced a new Roller Coaster Tycoon. They released a trailer for it. And it looks, if you know Atari's history with the Roller Coaster Tycoon franchise, me saying this is a massive compliment. If you don't know, it's going to sound like it's a backhanded compliment. It looks not terrible. It's it's got kind of like a I don't know if everybody this might date me. It also might like make me like, it might just be a weird thing. Nobody knows this anymore, but if you remember Weebles, if you remember the Weeble toys from way back in the day, I think those were in like the 80s, maybe even before. They probably go back to like the 60s, huh? But yeah, if you remember Weebles, those were a thing at one point in time. And it has that kind of aesthetic for the peeps, which is kind of odd, you know, because these little guys, they're all kind of a generic. That's not what I wanted. I didn't want a restroom. I want Danny. Danny's not feeling too good, it looks like. Danny's got some low energy. Danny needs to have a sit down. It's got a Weeble aesthetic to the peeps, as opposed to this kind of sexless, formless brunette creature that all the humans are, or peeps, again, they're not even really humans, are in this game. And that's a choice. The whole aesthetic is it's doing kind of like a tilt shift, kind of toy vibe, which is interesting. It's not bad, not great, not bad. I have to admit, when I first watched the trailer, I was a little off-put by it. I was a little kind of like, I mean, and again, like I said, if you know Atari's history with the franchise, if you, like me, were very excited and spent your allowance money, your chores money on a copy of Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 when it first came out, and then had to realize you didn't have a good enough graphics card and had to beg your mom for a upgraded graphics card for Christmas and had to learn how to install a new graphics card on your PC to be able to play it, and then it still ran like crap because it was Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 and was not very well made or very well optimized. If you know kind of Atari's history of how they've handled the game even since then, you might be forgiven for being skeptical about how they would handle a new sequel for the first time in 20 some odd years. That isn't some like weird freemium Farmville. I think was Farmville the freemium one? I don't really know mobile games like that, but you know, that kind of thing, or or just rehashing these same original games, but for mobile. Which I mean, hey, I have it on mobile. I'm not complaining, but their new additions to the Roller Coaster Tycoon franchise have not been well received for good reason. And this one, when it first came on, because of the new aesthetic, because of the way it was kind of looking, I was very skeptical. And then they showed me something that completely won me over, which is destructible rides. And when I say destructible rides, I mean, we can crash a roller coaster on this game. Like, that's not that special. We can just, build a roller coaster that yeets itself, a launched roller coaster that just yeets itself into oblivion and crashes and blows up. That's no problem. I mean, you turn the Ferris wheel up too high and the benches go flying off into into the ether. And that, to me, was hilarious and fun looking. Like, I don't know if I'll spend real human money on that game. I don't even know what the release date was, because it was just kind of an early trailer, it looked like. I don't know if the management, the actual like gameplay aspect of it, because this is a management sim, I don't know if the management aspect will be fun or entertaining or interesting or whatever. I don't know if it will be worth spending. I might it could very well be a wait until it's $3.50 on Steam because everybody hates it, and get it for the laugh of being able to crank the spinner ride up to full maximum volume and watch the people go flying off into space. But there is a part of me that finds that hysterically funny, and I kind of want to play the game just for that now. So if that was their goal in putting that mechanic in the game, was to appeal to people with warped sense of humor, they definitely 10 out of 10 would laugh at that. Oh no, he got stuck. Would laugh at that trailer again. I was quite impressed with that mechanic. And it's something that I've said this before about Planet Coaster. As much as I love that game, as fun as it is, it's definitely lacking in consequences for being dumb. It won't let you build a broken roller coaster. It won't let you accidentally put people on something where it drowns them, which you could totally do in this game. I mean, you can purposely do it, but you can also, like, I could build one of these rides with the exit hanging over the water, and people will just fall into the water and drown. And it'll absolutely tank your park rating. You can build roller coasters that accidentally crash. And it'll really tank your park rating and obviously cost you a lot of money. So the lack of that in Planet Coaster feels a little too safe, a little too unrealistic is not quite the word, because I mean obviously not, like, nobody's purposely doing that in the world, but there's just a lack of consequences. I guess safe is in the sense of there's not a realistic consequence to not testing your ride. Like, it forces you to test your ride before you open it, which is good habit in this game. You should always, if the option's available, it's not available on this slide that I'm not going to be able to demonstrate on, but you should always test your ride to make sure it can complete a circuit and it's not going to stall out somewhere or something. And part of the jank of this game, but also kind of the entertaining jank of this game, is that sometimes you can build a roller coaster that totally will complete the circuit if it's empty, but it goes over that one hill just a little too slow, and so when you add the weight of the guests, it actually can't, and then it'll crash. That's why you build block brakes, which is realistic. Plan Code doesn't really have any of those consequences. It doesn't really have any of that danger to it, and it's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. I totally understand that that's just not part of the aesthetic they're going for. But personally, I find it a little more entertaining to have did I make the ride right, because people's lives are actually on the line. And seeing that done, like, okay, we're going to soften we'll allow you to still do the ridiculous thing. We'll allow you to, I mean, there's things called void rides, which is a kind of known exploit. If we wanted to churn more people out of the park, to kind of, like, if our goal was to raise a bunch of money and not worry about, we weren't going for a guest goal as far as numbers, we just wanted to keep bringing people in, so we never wanted to hit the soft guest cap, we could build a ride where the exit falls into it goes underground with no path leading out of it. So when people exit the ride, they'll just fall into the void. They'll just fall down to hit the bottom of the plane, and they'll just disappear and despawn. And that'll eliminate a person from your park count, your guest count, and that'll free up space to spawn more people. They actually showed that happening. They showed somebody being picked up and just yeeted off into the abyss off the edge of the map in the trailer. Like, they 100% know what they're doing. And part of it is that they're advertising it. Part of making the aesthetic, again, the people being little weebles and like, clearly not people. They're just little, almost toy figures kind of thing. Definitely, I think, is kind of helped them get away with it in the modern world, to make it kind of more goofy and more silly. Planet Coaster is not the Dark Souls of theme park games. Yeah, definitely not. Planet Coaster is fun. I love Planet Coaster. Been actually playing it a little bit more recently. But yeah, I built a park on the hardest difficulty challenge mode, where you start with nothing. You start with no rides researched, or just like a handful of rides researched. You start with barely any money, and it's build a park from scratch. And that is the most hardcore mode that game has. And after just a few hours of playing that park has over $1 million in the bank and is generating literally tens of thousands of revenue per month, and it's got dozens of staff members, and it's got a big restaurant, 2 hotels, a bunch of $100,000 plus, which for that game's like economy is pretty expensive, rides, elaborate dark rides, stuff with prestige ratings in the over 1,000. Like you're pressing up against the maximum prestige rating that the game can even award. Yeah, it's just not very hard, which is fine. I mean, this game, for the most part, isn't particularly hard, especially once you kind of internalize some of its more esoteric or obscure mechanisms. But some of the later scenarios and some of the really like high-end scenarios on this can be somewhat challenging. But Planet Coaster's just kind of baby easy. Which is, again, not a complaint. It's a very fun game. But it also lacks... It's a bit polished. It's a bit corporate and commercial. And it lacks some of the jank and some of the weirdness and some of the goofiness this game has. That said, having 25,000 people in your park and having a ride that they're all trying to crowd into because it's really got like just absurdly high prestige rating. I have a save for a Cowboys versus Aliens park that I had built in the original Planet Coaster that just does not load anymore because there's just too many guests spawned and just so many decoration items and everything. Like it just, the game really doesn't like it, and they're all congregated outside of one ride trying to ride it. What do you mean they're hungry and can't buy any food anywhere? We have only one type of food available. That's part of the problem. Still got that going for us though. But yeah, it you can do some ridiculous things in Planet Coaster, for sure. But it does lack some of the kookiness. And part of that's just when this game was made. Part of that is it being a small team and it not being a corporate thing, which again is kind of part of the reason why Atari's relationship with the franchise has been not stellar. I don't want to be, again, if they sell a mobile version of the game that you can play on your phone, that's amazing, right? And it's fairly well optimized for touchscreen. It plays pretty well. It's got a couple bugs that I really wish they would fix, particularly with people going into, with guests walking into the into queue lines that they're not trying to enter. There's like a weird bug with them. They'll enter a queue line, walk to the entrance, and then walk right back out of the queue line. They won't join the queue. And in this, they're not supposed to be able to, drop items in the queue line. You can get, so this vomit, they can't vomit in the queue line. They can vomit right at the cusp of it, which can be annoying, can be a problem. But they can't vomit directly in the queue line. And they can't drop trash. You see these people carrying food items. Like these guys right here with these little white boxes in their hands. They're carrying stuff. They can't drop that in queue lines. They can't drop it on underground path, and they can't drop it on sloped path except at the joins between sloped paths. Sometimes they can. So they're not supposed to be dropping trash or throwing up in the queue line, yet for some reason on Roller Coaster Tycoon Classic mobile, or at least on iOS. That's a kind of common problem. Like, happens frequently enough that it is an annoyance to play. But yeah, that's a fairly minimal complaint, relatively speaking. I think they just had burned people with Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, and then some of the stuff after that. But it's interesting to see them going for a new game, a new aesthetic. They called it something, I think, workspaces, something, I can't remember. Not workshop, man, what was that? And see, this is part of the problem with it. The branding was kind of goofy and terrible, such that I've already forgotten what they're calling it now. The problem is it sounded like a Microsoft product, and I mean that like a Microsoft Office product, and I mean that in the worst way possible. But the game itself looks fun. Again, I'm 100% on board for being able to crank the Ferris wheel up so that it actually flings itself apart with the little cars flying everywhere. That just looks stupid and funny. And everything past that is kind of just, we'll see. We'll see if it's any good. We'll see if it's worth, I don't know what they're going to charge for it. It's only available for wish listing, I think, right now on Steam. Like, it's not even, I don't know that it had a firm release date. I didn't see one in the trailer, but I could have just not been paying close enough attention. That's usually a problem I should be running. What difference does it make if they mess up the queue line versus another area? None, insofar as... What do you mean this hasn't been fixed? Do I still only have one guy? Oh, I have no guys. Oh, no! So remember how I was telling you mechanics... Remember how I was telling you can drown staff members? So there is a non-zero... Oh man, everything is just so messed up, huh? I did hire one before, right? Like, I hadn't just completely blanked and forgotten to hire one. There's a non-zero chance that when a mechanic enters or exits a ride, that they glitch and fall through. And so whenever you're building like this one, and this one, they're all over water. Those exits are over water. There's a non-zero chance that those mechanics will glitch through there and fall into the water and drown. Which might have been what happened here. Let's see. Hard to tell. There's not like a... I mean, there is this dip. It might have been way back in May if I'd hired one and then he fell through like real early on. Oh man. Whoops. Well, something happened that was probably not optimal. Clearly not optimal because we had rides broken down that shouldn't have been. Back to this mine train coaster, and that question was, what difference does it make if they mess up the queue versus another area? So, none, except for where you've got your handyman assigned. So if I pull up this, you can see I've got this handyman assigned, and he really doesn't even need to be on these slopes. We could skip him out on these slopes. I'm just being safe. But if I don't assign, if there's a queue line, I'm not going to assign him to walk all the way up deep into the back of the queue line and back out. That's a lot of extra walking, and it takes him time to walk places. And you can realistically only cover a certain amount of distance before he starts becoming ineffectual. Like, there's no defined drop rate for vomit or for trash. I mean, there is, like, there's a random chance, but it's kind of you kind of just have to know how crowded an area is, how, like, if it's right outside of a ride that's going to have a high nausea rating. This one just got a 4, so that's non-insignificant. Anything above a 2 can really generate a lot of vomit, but 4 can generate lots of vomit, even though it's not particularly high. And so if they're throwing up here, and I've got him assigned to walk this area right here, fine, no problem. But if they're coming in here and throwing up, and I'm not expecting them to, then I'm not going to have guys assigned here. And part of the problem with that bug in Roller Coaster Tycoon Classic is that A, they're not supposed to throw up in those places. B, it seems to be somewhat random. So it's not like, so it'd be, you'd be wasting a bunch of money to assign guys for a handyman for every single entrance, every single queue. It's a bit wasteful. And see, this is how accidents happen, because this didn't have enough speed, and then actually neither of them had enough speed to actually blow up there. But see, you can make trains blow up on this one. Let's do this way. So there's no benefit to putting them into every single queue, because it's just going to eat into your budget. And yet you kind of need to, because at any moment, because the bug is so random, I've not figured out what causes it. So it's not like I can sit there and say, oh, well, this queue is set up in a particular way that, oh, that's not going to work. What if... I don't think that's going to work. If you have a queue set up in a specific way that causes it, I haven't figured it out. And so maybe there's some commonality, but to me it just seemed to be completely random. It would just and I think it might have to do with breakdowns. A ride would break down and people would exit the queue. Okay, that's going to work. People would exit the queue, and then it would cause some kind of like flag as far as this is queue path. They're not supposed to just generically walk through it to get toggled off or something. Again, I don't know on the from the code side of things what was actually causing it to break. All I know is that it was very frustrating, and it's the last time I played Roller Coaster Tycoon Classic on mobile, it wasn't fixed. And again, it's just the game's not supposed to operate that way. Like, if it was consistent of, no, we've decided, despite Chris Sawyer's original vision, that that's not a thing. We've decided that in this version of the game, guests will actually throw up in queue lines, and you have to just be cognizant of that. Okay, fine. That's just a new rule in the game, and you're going to have to play along with it. I'd be perfectly fine with that. The fact that it was random, that people would just... And it was only because people were walking into queues and not queuing. They would just walk into the queue, walk to the entrance of the ride, and then walk right back out. It was just some glitch in their pathfinding behavior, and it's just annoying. It's just frankly just annoying. Oh, yes. There we go. Got that award again. This game is really generous with that award. I mean, we are getting it consistently. There's supposed to be a list that it's pulling from, and that's just supposed to be a option. And it's like, no. We know what you want. You built 10 toilets. You were gunning for this one. We're going to make sure you get it. I do want to see how fast we're going here. I think we're going to come back this way. Over top of this part of the track. Bouncy, bouncy. Those bunny hills look fun. Actually, like, every once in a while I do catch myself looking at a ride I'm making in this game and being like, actually, I would ride this. This does look fun. Sometimes I'm making things that I'm like, this is horrendous and no human being should ever ride this because it would probably kill them. But the game doesn't care. And then other times I'm like, no, this is fun. I am a sucker for runaway mine train style coasters. I like the aesthetic. I like the vibe of it. I like the kind of ricketiness, the lack of sophistication in the ride type. Let's put the block brakes there, and 3, tight corner. Boom. All right, let's see if that is a rideable coaster. Oh yeah, right. Duh. Let's see if this is tolerable or if I've made some kind of horrid monstrosity. It doesn't seem too bad. I should bump. Not that it's really good. I'm going to double close and reopen. Sorry about the flickering there, flipping through the things. That's the other thing. As far as streaming Planet Coaster goes, Planet Coaster, especially when you're putting in lights that are triggered by stuff, it does get a bit, you can get real flickery with it. You don't have to, but it does kind of make for good lighting effects on rides and stuff, which does make it a little less accessible of a game. I mean, all games you kind of have to have a bit of a cognizance that there could be flickering at any moment. I mean, it's annoying is enough of a reason to not want the glitch to happen, but thanks for the explanation. Yeah, it's a shame because overall it's an incredibly well done port. I've played some extremely bad mobile ports of classic games that I would not recommend. And that one I would. But you have to kind of know it's got this annoying glitch, and every once in a while it's going to be a problem. And to not to harp on that one thing too much more, but just to elaborate a little bit, part of the problem is trash that sits for a long enough time in game will absolutely tank your park rating. One piece of trash that sat for whatever the minimum amount of time is, I don't remember exactly what it was. I think it's like 6 months in game equivalent. Might be less. But it's so many. It might be 3 months. Might be half that. But it's a certain amount of game ticks that trash has sat on a piece of path without being cleaned up, and that is the same for vomit. It'll drop your park rating by, I don't know, like 10 points or something like that. Something totally manageable. But the problem is if this queue gets filled with it and there's nobody cleaning the queue because that's not a mechanic in the game. All of a sudden you'll look down and you're like, why is my park rating 300? And it's because you've got 4 or 5 queues. Most of them are clean. You've got a dozen rides in your park. Most of them are clean, but like 3 or 4 of them are just full. Every tile has multiple trash items in it. And it's random and not consistent enough of a bug to warrant completely changing your play style for. So it just becomes, it can lose you scenarios. If it was something where it's just like, this is annoying, but it's not game breaking, I'd be less concerned. The fact that it can literally ruin, you could literally lose a playthrough because of that bug and you not being able to figure out why your park rating is low because you weren't expecting that bug. I mean, again, once you know about it, it's not, you can kind of figure, oh, that must have been what happened. But the first time it happens to you, you're just going to be like, what? Especially if you have familiarity with the game. You're like, well, what's going on? Why am I all of a sudden losing? Are there a bunch of people lost? Is there a bunch of people stuck somewhere? No? Okay, well then, why? Why is my rating so bad? I will say for Planet Coaster, I like what I've seen of it in terms of being able to create fun themes with a ride or the whole area. Yeah. Roller Coaster Tycoon doesn't really, even 3, which went to 3D, so it was a little bit more like capable as far as building rides out. It's not really a ride where you make your, you can make a great park. And there's, between the workshop, so modded content, user-generated content, and I've seen some, there is literally in Roller Coaster, okay, hold on, Planet Coaster. In Planet Coaster 1, I have a save file of it somewhere. Maybe if I do not know that my rig can both load this park and stream at the same time. It might cause everything to implode, but I have and I don't know the creator's name. If I did, I'd shout him out. But there is a 1-to-1, and when I say obscenely, I mean obscenely accurate recreation of Disneyland Paris that somebody made. And it's got a ton of custom assets of characters and animatronics and a bunch of absolutely wild stuff. It is mind-blowing how much time and energy that person put into, and I think it might have also been like a bit of a team effort, so I could be, like attributing this to a single person. It's actually like a team of people that put it together, but it is an absolutely incredible effort. There's also a 1-to-1 recreation of PortAventura in Spain that during COVID times I spent, that's how you crash a roller coaster in Roller Coaster Tycoon. I didn't think 56 was too fast. Apparently it was quite a bit too fast. Well, that's unfortunate. least nobody was on it. So the good news is that's not going to hurt us too much. Nobody would want to ride it because they'd think it was unsafe, but at least it shouldn't hurt our park rating. And hey, look, we got a much better color scheme on this coaster. So actually, it was all for the benefit. That was just the game being like, hey, re-roll. There's a better color scheme out there. But yeah, there was a legit 1-to-1 recreation of Port Aventura, which being able to just kind of walk around that park during COVID was like, again, in the digital realm, was just very therapeutic and kind of fun and calming. It's not like the greatest theme park in the world, but it's very pretty. It was a Universal park when it was built, or at least at one point in time, it was a Universal park. Right, that it doesn't need to be. Let's not increase and let's just see. But yeah, so Planet Coaster very much allows you to do way more than this game does. And there are some absolutely incredible creations from the community for that game. I will say I don't love using those things. I not that I think there's anything wrong with it. There's definitely nothing wrong with it. And again, people have made some amazing things with those custom creations, but I do feel like I'm a strong believer in the mantra that limitations breed creativity. I think a lot of the problem with other issues aside, I think a problem with things like the Odyssey movie is that Christopher Nolan just has an unlimited budget to just throw at things. I mean, obviously there's some amount of money where the studio is going to say, Universal's going to say, okay, Chris, chill out. This thing needs to be profitable. But I think that's part of Disney's problem with projects, is this is not an original thought. There's a lot of people that have commented on the fact that a lot of modern movies and stuff, even AAA video game projects, are a little bit too interested in spending a ton of money just to spend and not worried about making the thing as best as it can be. Do I need to... Why is it not... Hold on. Sorry, I was trying to get test results to change because I added this little bit of walkway over the track, which should create a head chopper effect and should buff the stats slightly to above 5, because it was just below 5. There we go. But it wasn't updating, and I thought all I had to do was double close and reopen, and that didn't work. And retest, and that didn't work. But I think limitations breed creativity, or at least fuel creativity. I think having a limitation placed on you can make you make decisions that you wouldn't have to otherwise. And I like the problem solving that comes along with trying to figure out how to make your vision work in a game where all you've got is these limited pieces. I will say the more they add of the original Planet Coaster stuff into Planet Coaster 2, the more likely I am to actually finally get the game. I've been holding off because I want them to kind of finish their DLC run, and I want them to kind of add some stuff back in. I will say their latest Studios pack almost got me, very close to got me, because the game was on sale for like $12 this week because of the DLC, and the DLC has a slot car, I think Test Track or Radiator Springs Racer ride mechanism in it, and being able to make my own dark ride out of that ride mechanism has been a dream since 1999 when the original Test Track opened. So that I will be purchasing that at some point, I'm sure. But that one almost got me this week. After some of the things I saw online people did with Minecraft, I'm not surprised people spend the time doing such elaborate parks on Planet Coaster. I mean, there was a guy that built a functioning version of Pokemon, I think it was Blue, in Minecraft. Completely programmed from the ground up with the redstone switches and stuff. Just insane. Just absolute madman level stuff. And like, yeah, like when you're in a world where that's what people are up to, it's not particularly shocking that somebody's going to come along and build a one-to-one recreation of Disneyland Paris or Port Aventura or any other park. I will say, as somebody who has, there's one of the short videos on the channel from way back, like probably a few years ago now, was an attempt at a test track style ride that I was actually like the car testing aspect, the indoor portion of Test Track. That of course didn't, the outdoor portion where you increase speed and you zip around the outside of a building was not feasible with any of the ride systems available in the game. So instead I had to kind of change everything after the crash test with the wall that opens up. So the finale was a bit different, but other than that, doing kind of the best job possible to recreate Test Track 1.0, the original Test Track, in that game. That speaks to that thing I was saying about limitations breeding creativity, but also part of the problem with Planet Coaster is that lack of there are just certain, that was not how I wanted to do that. There are just certain ride systems that aren't in the game, and they don't really care about ride copyrights. And I'm saying that in a very friendly and polite way. I want to be clear. I'm not accusing them of doing anything untoward, but you know, they very much have B&M style, Bolliger and Mavillard style coasters. They have Intamin style coasters that if a real coaster company tried to build one-to-one what's in that game, they'd get sued for violating the design patents from those companies. And they're not branded. Like the versions in Planet Coaster are kind of generically named to avoid association with those companies. Again, not saying this is a bad thing. It's great because it allows you to rebuild your favorite coaster if the game has the type of model that coaster is in it, or at least a version of that type of model. But they don't. They're not above putting in that kind of stuff in the game. So it would be nice if they added more stuff like that. Which, again, Planet Coaster 2 and the DLCs in particular seem to be adding a lot of that stuff. I wasn't particularly excited by the addition of water parks to that game as kind of a main mechanic of what makes Roller Coaster Tycoon, or Roller Coaster, yeah, Planet Coaster 2 worth buying as opposed to what I already had on Planet Coaster 1. Oh, well, now you can build water park. It's like, okay. No. I mean, sure, but no. But as they've added more stuff, and just stuff like water in that game looks so much better than it did in 1, so they've definitely improved a lot of stuff. But I don't blame people for being pretty mixed on it when it first dropped. There wasn't a whole lot of there, so to speak. All right. So hopefully building that will... Let's get him close. We can see a little cleaner. Okay. So first off, it looks like we've got overcrowding issues all through the front half of this park. There's just not much we're going to be able to do about that. Looks like we got pricing issues on some of these rides because nobody's riding them, which is also hurting. We're not hurting for cash, so we'll just make these stupidly cheap. We'll lose money on these little flats, but that's closed, but I'm wondering if people were complaining. No thoughts. Let's see if people come back in once he repairs it. No, they're not. So they are definitely not wanting to ride it for cost. We'll reduce this down. Just a little bit of housekeeping here because we're almost... Hey, May the 4th. We are almost at the end of this scenario. We just need to get that back up to 7. We were close. We were above 700 there for a little while, and now we started to dip. Like, we were in the 720s. And our rating, something happened in October. Something happened. And I'm suspecting this is mostly people who wanted to go home, running out of cash, want to go home, kind of hitting us pretty hard because they were struggling to find the exit. Ooh, that spiral slide being $2 is way too much. That thing's good. Did people start going on this again? Okay, yeah. Let's see. There's nothing out here to really draw people, which is part of the problem. Because they're just wandering around out here, getting tired, not spending money, not using the benches, not eating to restore their energy. This is why I usually don't build this park this way. I think we also need some extra handymen out in this area. When it was desolate and there was nothing out here, it was fine to have very few handymen out here, just like 1 or 2. Now there are too many guests, and that roller coaster is making people puke. So that uptick in park rating definitely suggests that this path right here, helping people path find their way out. I wonder how many of them were stuck in this loop around this island because it was technically the closest thing to the exit. If you were out here on this island, this path might have been like, oh, this is a way to get to the exit, and then they just got stuck in a loop out here. Let's fast forward another month and just see, and then we'll start building more rides if we absolutely have to. Hey, there's the guest number starting to tick back up. Park rating, wow, hockey stick. Okay, 730s. That's not bad. Hey, 750. Okay, there we go. Now we just have to make sure it stays above that. But I have a feeling it will now that we've fixed the lost guest issue, or resolved partially the lost guest issue. That rain every single time is going to make things worse, though. Oh, you know what? We also don't have... Not that we need it. In fact, actually, I don't want it. This thing's still circulating without guests. I'm not paying that much. You know what? We don't want to bankrupt people at this late stage. So we're just going to reduce prices on everything. We don't need more money. We only have to make it a couple more months. Make all the expensive rides $5. And that should help. 892 is definitely a lot better. And let's see. Yeah, we're over 800. Okay, we can just fast forward to the end. But yeah, of course, all of this has been... We've talked a little bit about some of the D23 stuff. I'm sure there's stuff that I wanted to mention that I've completely blanked on. We haven't even talked about the Monsters, Inc. coaster, though they didn't show a whole lot of it. Again, kind of my overall take on D23 is excited for some of the new stuff, more excited than I was for some of it, less excited for some specific things than I had been, but overall fairly excited to see what happens. But I'm still very cautious with Disney. They have burned they burned bridges enough over the past, really, I would say, decade. I mean, I know people really point to the Chapek era, but it had started before that. But definitely, I don't trust Imagineering like I used to. But it does seem like they're trying to get back on the right foot, and we'll see long term. I'm where I at one point was going to be critical of pretty much any idea because it felt like they were not coming up with good ideas. At least now I feel like I'm willing to wait and see and be surprised if it's better than I expect, or at least as good as I expect, be happy with it. I don't hate the Muppets overlay. I hate that they got rid of Muppets 3D, Muppet Vision 3D. That just was a really bad, dumb ride closure, or attraction closure. It isn't a ride per se, but I like the Muppets overlay on Rock and Roller Coaster. Do I think it's a valid one-to-one swap? No. I think we lost more, especially from a heritage perspective. That was one of the last things that Jim Henson did. One of his last appearances is Kermit. So I feel like that was a bit of history that they really shouldn't have. They shouldn't have messed with it. But if they can bring it back one-to-one somewhere else that fits better for them, I'll be less critical going forward. But yeah, so the Monsters Inc. thing we didn't really talk about. And Halloween Horror Nights. Halloween Horror Nights is going on right now as we speak for team members. Team member preview started last night, going on again tonight. And this weekend's the first public weekend. I will not be there, but we haven't even talked about any of that stuff. We've got some fun stuff to talk about next week too. So that's going to do it now for this week. We have, congratulations, achieved our objective. I will say, if we ever beat one of my previous scores, which we will eventually, because we'll get to stuff that I just haven't played yet on this version of OpenRCT2, it'll have us enter our name to go in the leaderboard. But so far, none of the parks we've built, because I'm kind of talking and not kind of playing super hardcore, none of them have had a company value higher. But if your company value exceeds what's in the record book already, it has you enter your name. But anyway, that's going to do it for this stream. We've been going for 2 hours and 15 minutes, so thanks for sticking with us. I know we usually stop after 2, but I knew we could get both of these done in roughly 2 hours. So I will try to be here next week and do this again. No guarantees, obviously, if life stuff happens again. And I'll try to actually remember to post about it. This week I didn't do that at all. Last week I was bad about not posting when what stream wasn't going to happen. But yeah, so turn notifications on. You'll get notified the stream starting. But thanks for joining us this time. Glad to have you all here, and I'll see you next time.